Well, today we have Jim Caffery to speak with us about his journey from a monastery with walls to a monastery without walls. And Jim is a priest. He was ordained in 1981. He's in the parish now of Balally in South Dublin. And he's served in several parishes and was youth director for a number of years. 2016, he entered Mepkin Abbey, which we've heard is in South Carolina. And but now he's back serving in the parish, and he's hoping to build a contemplative sense within the parish. We look forward, Jim, to hearing about your journey to Cistercian monastic life and your return to the parish life in Dublin. Thank you very much for being with us. Thanks, Jim.
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope I can be heard.
Yes.
Good morning to our fellow meditators all over the world, and through the rather unexpected gift of technology, we're speaking here from the parish church of Balally in South Dublin in Ireland. Saint Bernard, when he wrote to the early Cistercian monks, said that to be a successful monk, you had to be a lover of the place and a lover of the brethren. Well, in this parish community, I'm blessed to be in a truly beautiful place with beautiful people. And it's very easy to love the beauty of Balally, and even easier to love the beauty of my new parishioners. I'm joined also here in the church this morning. You probably can see in front of me, I'm joined by a large amount of clothing and food that's on its way to Ukraine. But I'm also joined live by 35 living parishioners who are here meditating with us this morning, and also by about 20 parishioners who are joining online. This is a first new experiment for us in technological terms in the parish, and I have a great collaborator, Paul. This parish of Balally is one I've been in for just 4 months. But there has been a monastic tradition here already. One of the priests who served here about 35 or 40 years ago, Father Paddy Lyons, left this parish to become a monk in Glenstall Abbey in County Limerick, and he's still there. And he will actually be visiting us here in the parish shortly. This parish also has a wonderful foundation. It's been led for 25 years by one of my predecessors, who, thank God, is still with us, Father Dermot Lane. Dermot's a distinguished theologian, an extraordinary pastor, and much loved by the parishioners and by myself. And he certainly inspired people to live according to the vision of the Second Vatican Council. So with that background, I'd like to share my own little story. As a fellow traveler, as a pilgrim, as a fellow meditator, as a monk, and as a pastor. And when I was asked to give the talk, I picked the title, From a Monastery with Walls to a Monastery Without Walls. I was always fascinated by monks and monasteries. In fact, when I was ordained in 1981, I did my ordination retreat in Glenstall Abbey that I've mentioned already, a beautiful Benedictine community in Maru, County Limerick in the southwest of Ireland. I did many retreats there and visited many other monasteries over the years. In my last parish, before I finished my pastoral work, I was every morning able to visit the sisters in St. Alphonsus community, a Redemptorist monastery in our own parish, and I joined them for morning prayer. Then I got a sabbatical. And during the sabbatical, I went to America and I visited a lot of monasteries. Thomas Merton's famous monastery in Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky, St. Anselm's in Washington, Collegeville in Minnesota, St. Meinrad's in Indiana. But the very first monastery I visited was Mepkin Abbey in South Carolina. It was an accidental visit, but like a lot of accidents, things happen. And I fell in love with that monastery. I felt challenged, so challenged that after about 3 days there, I stood outside the beautiful church that is in the monastery, and I said to myself, or maybe hopefully to the Lord, Lord, you're not asking me to come here, to South Carolina, and to a Cistercian monastery. And the answer seemed to be yes. And I'm actually delighted that later on today, some of my brothers in Mepkin will be tuning in to meditate with us, not live, but because of the time gap, but they will also listen to the talk. I took the name Columba in honor of the Irish saint Columba, but more especially, Blessed Columba Marmion, who, like myself, was a diocesan priest and then became a monk, in his case in Maritzu in Belgium. And interestingly enough, Columba Marmion was just down the road in Dundrum Parish as a curate for 2 years. I loved my time in Mepkin. I loved being a monk. It was a monastery with walls, certainly. Because it was Cistercian, we were rarely out. We were up early in the morning, beginning with vigils at 4 o'clock, and we went to bed early as well. Besides being in the church 7 times a day, we worked. I worked cutting mushrooms for 2 of the years that I was there. Day in, day out. A very exciting job, as you can imagine. Then I progressed to look after the monastic guests. This was a fabulous experience because I had the opportunity to walk with, and it was young men, we introduced young women later. 2 people came to the monastery every month. They stayed with us, and I walked with them for that month. And again, I know some of them will be listening later on today, and I have wonderful memories. But what was clear to me was this, that there was a fascination about monasteries with younger people in America. Fascination. And they weren't disappointed when they came to live with us. But something else I noticed is that none of them considered staying for life. They saw it as something temporary, a month. They might say, Father Columba, can I stay for another 3 months, but not for life? And that was interesting because it began to help me to think that maybe a new sort of monasticism needed to develop besides the traditional one. For me, one of the greatest growths when I was in the monastery was the realization that life was more than work. I think before I went away as a diocesan priest, and especially when I was in the youth service, because I was a parish priest in Iona Road at the same time, so I had 2 jobs. I often asked myself, who am I apart from what I do? And often I wasn't too sure. The monastery of Mepkin taught me to face myself and see why I had to work so hard and why silence and being alone was a challenge. Having a menial job, as you could consider it, of cutting mushrooms, was far less impressive on a CV than being a rector of a church, a parish priest of a parish, and a youth director. When I went to Mepkin, I lost all of those, gone. And I became the bottom of the queue, the least important monk in the monastery. In fact, St. Benedict in his rule says that when a priest enters, the abbot should make it particularly hard for him, because he says that priests more than others are prone to being proud. And I had to learn and to live that. But I also learned a lot of other things in Mepkin. I learned that the rule of St. Benedict, written centuries ago for monks, was also for life, and not just for people living in monasteries. The extraordinary richness of the rule of St. Benedict touched me deeply. And again, when I would be working and walking with these young men who came to visit the monastery, I realized that the rule of Benedict had something to say to their lives and a way of living. It challenged them to live a life of balance, of prayer, and of work together. And I mentioned work. Well, of course, there was also prayer. We prayed 7 times a day together. But as well as that, there was our own time for private prayer, Lectio Divina, reading God's word, and especially meditation. And it was such a blessing that I had discovered before I went to Mepkin the World Community for Christian Meditation, because now I had a way to meditate, using our mantra Maranatha twice a day, sometimes more than twice a day. And I passed that wisdom on to the young men who came to live with me in the monastery. That was a great and important gift. I learned the importance of silence. One of the great wisdoms of the monastic tradition is go to your cell and your cell will teach you. And there was a lot of time spent in our own cell, in our own room. You had no television, nothing else except yourself. And you had to face yourself. But as well as the wisdom of the rule of Benedict, there was also the wisdom of the desert fathers and mothers. And then Cistercian people like Thomas Merton, Michael Casey, Basil Pennington, Thomas Keating, and Benedictine authors like Joan Chichester. And in learning from their wisdom, we were also taught to learn attention. And again, in learning attention that was so ecumenical and interfaith, because that introduced me to the world of mindfulness, to Buddhism, to the Dalai Lama, and to Thomas Merton's great friend, Thich Nhat Hanh. The fundamental teaching of when you're washing dishes, you wash dishes. That's not a lesson I've still learned fully. I don't wash too many dishes, but I had to wash lots of them in Mepkin. But when I did, my thoughts usually were planning the next meeting or the next afternoon. But in the monastery, you couldn't do that because you were there and there was no car or no place or no other people to escape to. Also in the monastery, I had the blessing of living with some wonderful wisdom figures. My extraordinary friend, Father Gary Heckel, was the director of our wonderful retreat center, and he became a close and wonderful friend. He too had been a pastor before he became a monk. And I saw Gary reach people as a listener and as a teacher and as a guide. He ran a fantastic retreat center, and he had people of all faiths and none, and he was open to them all with the beauty of his love. But he also offered them something. He offered them the rule of Benedict, and he offered them the gift of prayer and meditation. And then, of course, COVID came. All of the Cistercian retreat centers in America closed within days, and so did ours. But a new development happened in Mepkin. Garrick went on Zoom. And instead of having 16 at his retreats, he often had 160 and more. And he brought into us wonderful speakers, like Cynthia Bergeau, for example, a close friend of his. He introduced the retreatants to the new world of meditation and prayer. But above all, he taught me the value of having a brother and of living in community. And some people said to me when I was leaving Mepkin and coming home, it'll be very difficult now as you don't have Garrick and the other brothers. And that, of course, has been true. I miss them all. And then I come to Balally, and I have Dermot as my brother. So someone was looking after me. But Garrick's skill as an organizer were not what was really the most significant part of his witness to me. His holiness, his dedication to prayer, and his willingness to pass it on, and his sense that he wanted to dialogue with people of all traditions was truly touching. He was fascinated by the word community and really supported me in my journey of meditation. As well as Garrick, I was so blessed to have Abbot Stan as my abbot, the leader of the community. Other friends like Father Jonas and Brother Juan. And I learned bits of wisdom from them all. But one bit of wisdom that I wanted to share with you that I think is really important about living in community and living with others was from Father Kevin, who had the unenviable task of being my novice master. And he used to say that the community, the brothers, are the sandpaper of your life. And I learned that. So it was a wonderful experience. And then I wondered, would I spend the rest of my life in Mepkin as a monk? And I was sorely tempted. In fact, this time last year, when with my spiritual director, the wonderful Sister Anne, I was in the throes of discernment. If somebody told me, next March you'll be standing talking to the world community from Balally Parish in Dublin, I would have said probably not. I'd probably be staying in Mepkin, but I'm not sure what happened. But gradually I came to the realization that maybe the call was to come home. Ironically, one of the other jobs I got towards the end of my time was to get speakers on Zoom for the monks to give ongoing formation. And one of the speakers I got was a certain Father Dermot Lane, who gave us 3 talks on creation spirituality. And afterwards, the monks told me, all of them, at a community meeting, the Irishman was the best. I wasn't surprised by that at all. But when I decided to come home, I did realize that the person who went to Mepkin was a different one to the one who would be coming home. Through living in community, through meditating with others, through walking the monastic life, my life had been changed. So I would not be coming home to business as usual. And so I returned to the monastery without walls. A lot of people said to me, it's going to be a really rough transition. But the truth is, it wasn't a transition at all. That was because of the people of this parish and Dermot, who made me so welcome from the very word go. And even though I'm only 4 months here, there's no signs that they're going to throw me out yet. But I have learned a lot for myself, and my style of ministry has changed. I can't, I'm now 64, be rushing around like I used to, like when I was 24. But also I've learned that the first thing I need to establish, and I'm really working on this at the moment, is a rule of life for myself, so that I have a regular lifestyle in the parish. And I'm working on it. I like to get up in the mornings and go to the Carmelite sisters, the enclosed sisters, down the road in a local parish, 5 minutes drive from here, and say morning prayer and prayer during the day with them. I try then to come back to the house where I have a beautiful little prayer room and do my 20 minutes of prayer in communion with you, the members of the community, my Maranatha time, and then do my Lectio. And I'm trying then to also have a walk during the day, meeting some friend. We have a beautiful park close by called Marley Park, and I like to walk there because that's an important part of loving the place, as I said at the beginning. And so then from 5 to 6, I try to do my reading, listen to some nice music, and then join at 6 o'clock with some of my English sisters and brothers online in meditation from 6 to 6:30, and I make it most days. And in that context, I'd like to say a particular word of thanks to Julia and to Eileen, who helped me a lot last year during my discernment by asking me to give a little Lenten course while I was still in Mepkin and while I was still Father Columba to the world community. And it was to the Oblates. And that was a beautiful and wonderful experience. And now it's so nice to be meditating with you all. So now I'm back to the monastery without walls, to this parish of Balally. There's a monk in Glenstall who wrote recently, people all over this country, indeed further afield, are looking for spiritual sustenance, and there is a famine in the land. The church is prone to every form of political intrigue, but we can retrieve our birthright and take back the church which we inherited and which we are. In Ireland, either we do something immediate or daring, or the whole edifice will collapse. That's a challenge. The church as we know it in Ireland will collapse And so we have to have something in place. And I believe at the heart of that will be contemplation. I believe that I first of all have to try to live in this parish what I learned in the monastery. Not just say, well, that was great, 4 years, now I'm back. No. I think what I have to try and do is in some way to live the rule of life of still being a monk, but this time a monk here in the parish. But I'm not a monk, and I'm not trying to make the parish into a monastery or a community of monks, because that's not what we are either. We are a parish. But at the same time, I think we can be a contemplative parish. Lots of parishes have contemplative prayer groups or World Community Maranatha prayer groups as part of one thing out of many. I believe a contemplative parish should have its meditation and its contemplation at the heart of the parish and reach out from there. And that would be the vision that I would hope to share in this parish. But a contemplative parish, and you see all this stuff here, a contemplative parish with an outreach to the poor. And thank God, another gift I have received is that I have many contacts now, people who are going to come and visit. Some of the monks from Glenstall, I mentioned Father Finton. Father Christopher will be visiting here soon. With some collaborators from the parish, we'll hope to organise pilgrimages, beginning with one to St. Bridget of Kildare, who herself was a monk and a nun, and led a community of men and women. I think that I would hope that every meeting in the parish will begin with a period of silence and meditation. Leadership in any parish must go beyond clericalism, and it truly will, if we base it on contemplation and meditation. Also, we'll have the opportunity, I hope, very soon to introduce meditation to the children in the schools. Only tomorrow I will be meeting with Noel Keating, our dear Irish coordinator, and he will be helping us in our 2 parish schools to teach the children meditation with the help of the principals and the teachers. And we had a wonderful experience yesterday in the parish where we had our Lenten book. In the monastery, the abbot gives the book to be read by the monks for Lent. They read it through and then they reflect on it together. We used to do it in Mepkin. It's in the Rule of Benedict. And so 150 of our parishioners signed up, and Father Dermot and I blessed the books and distributed them yesterday to parishioners. And I was totally overcome and overwhelmed by that. Of course, then there is the world community. You in Benedict's Well, you the Oblates. I think of the wisdom of people like Sarah Batchelor, whom I'm in contact with in Australia. And of course, what a gift we have in Father Lawrence. I never tune in to his talks that I don't get something new and vigorous out of them. He truly is a wisdom figure, a contemporary monk who lives monastic life outside the walls, bringing us back to the wisdom of John Main. And I'm privileged that in July, I'll be able to spend a month, or not a month, I wish it was, but a week in Bonvo, our new monastery without walls outside Paris for the community. So I thank you for being with me this morning. I ask you to bless and to pray for us here in the parish of Balally. We started off as 35, and I think we're now about 55 here. I pray that here in Balally, we will work and learn together. Wonderful foundations have been laid. There was, for example, a mindfulness group active. And mindfulness is the first step and a vital step to meditation. And Barbara, indeed, who led that group and continues to lead it, is with us this morning. So it's a time of blessing, a time of joy, and I thank you for inviting me and our community here in Balally to be with the world community of Christian meditation today. And I ask you to bless us, to bless me, that I can make the journey from the monastery without walls to the monastery with walls, and that maybe together we can make that journey in hope and in joy.
Thank you, Jim, for your beautiful, human, humble sharing. You've really opened up for us a lot of the detail of that journey, and we've gone all sorts of places with you. The idea that young people could be in the monastery just for a certain period of time, not for life. What an interesting thing to highlight, and I think the oblates, the resident oblates at Bonneau, are something towards that. So we thank you, and we take away that lovely image of community, the sandpaper of our lives, and I think we can all relate to us that we'd all have people who form that function for us. And, you know, lovely to hear about the rule of life for yourself that you're pursuing now. And I think we would all really encourage you and bless you in that. We all know ourselves that there's always more things that need our attention, and no one more than a parish priest would know that. But that if we can take the time to put prayer and silence at the centre, then we are having an opportunity to live out of the source. So thank you, Jim, very much, and all your community there. Probably a first to have our speakers surrounded by those considerable donations for people in need, and you know, blessings indeed from all of us, I'm sure, on your work there. So we will finish with our closing prayer, and then Julia will gather the evening together for us. May the divine assistance be always with us.
And with our absent brothers and sisters.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, I'd just like to add my thanks to Judy for leading us so beautifully this evening, and to Father Jim for that wonderful, inspiring talk. I hope, I don't know if you've seen all the chats that are coming in, Father Jim, but I think you've spoken to an awful lot of hearts today, and we will be copying them and making sure you get them so that you know what everybody has been saying. But it was a wonderful, wonderful talk and really inspiring. So thank you very much indeed.